Okay, for the benefit of some of us that are actually joining us for today at the first time, this platform is being sponsored by Iamesep Initiative Advancement in Mining, Earth Sciences, and Environmental Protection. And we are geared towards ensuring professionalism through fostering awareness of Nigerian geology and mineral resources at different levels. Also bridge the gap, between bridge the gap between this among relevant stakeholders, while we also uphold global best practices. Our mission is to take initiatives involving the youth, to explore earth sciences. Okay, I'm going to mute everyone. So, as I was saying, our mission is actually to ensure that the youth are actually carried along as early as possible to explore earth sciences, mining, mineral exploration in this industry through an organized learning activities by also providing hands-on mineral resource programs, innovative education, and practical mining training opportunities to include mentorship to enhance sustainable development of the extractive Nigeria industries. This is actually who we are, and over the years, we've been able to carry out some programs touching every aspect of mining, every aspect of small-scale mining, restructuring some artisanal miners. And we've also, this year, done some programs on lithium because of the lithium dispensation and the green technology that actually invoke. Last month, we were able to discuss a very important topic on lithium that has to do with low-grade lithium and the way and some method of processing them. In the previous month, we also talked about the lithium ore and also the prices. January, we also talked about the lithium, the quality, the resources, the geology, and actually the possible ways of finding them. So today, we'll be also looking at something a bit different away, but from our young professionals, because this platform is actually meant to groom people that have passion, especially the young ones that have passion in mining, and also see a way of putting small-scale mining in the right perspective. Iamesep is made up of a lot of professionals who are actually volunteers to do one or two things based on their past experiences. A lot of engineers are here, geologists are here, business people are here, and a lot of entrepreneurs are also here. So today we'll be going straight away to look at oil sand mining. And oil sand mining is also going to be brought to us by one of our youngest professionals who actually will be connecting to Canada in few time. But before that, I will want to take some opening remark if Dr. Mrs. Salau is close by. Dr. Mrs. Salau, I don't know if she's close by, if she's there. Okay, let me unmute her. Okay, you can just say hello to our participants. She's on transit to somewhere, but she will try and say something before we actually continue. Dr. Mrs. Salau, you can unmute yourself now.
Yeah, thank you very much for this beautiful occasion. We're using this to mark the May 1st in Nigeria. It's Labor Free Day today. And we feel that everybody that have interest in the resources management of this country should have just put up this little time to hear what we are talking about. We've talked so much about the metallic minerals. We've talked so much about any other minerals of interest that we know it could be mined and is close to the community. At the same time, we have to talk about what we need most in our infrastructural development, which we are just letting out to waste away. Somehow, it's not well managed, and we don't even know how to manage it. So in this occasion, we just felt that we're talking about oil and gas, and we have bitumen that is even seeping away on the surface in Nigeria. But our problem is what? Processing. How do we manage it? So we have one of ours who has been working in the bitumen company for some time. And we just said that, please come and share your experience with us. Today, we have engineer Mariam Salawu, who has been working with the Sucom Bitumen Sand Oil Company in Canada. You are welcome on this special occasion. Grace the May 1st for us, and here we are. The youth are already growing, so they should be able to take the bull by their horns, and then let's hear from them. The bitumen is up, and we know it's the 6th. Nigeria is the 6th in the world map. So what do we do with it? How do we do it? In terms of little entrepreneurship, so that we know that the youth are ready to take the profession as they go by. Thank you. For
okay,
everybody
thank you.
that are here, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Mrs. Salau, for that intro. It's a pleasure to have you here. Dr. Mrs. Salau is one of the person that I look up to. She has done so much in bringing some of us up in this profession. So much passion to make sure that the youth and the young ones actually understand this profession from the onset. Today, we'll be taking on the oil sand, which is also known as tar sand. Is a kind of a type of unconventional petroleum deposit that consists mainly of sand, clay, water, and some molasses-like structure called the bitumen. Bitumen is heavy, is viscous, is a hydrocarbon that doesn't really actually flow easily and must be extracted from the sand and clay mixture. So it's a little bit different from just pumping liquid oil. This, because of its viscous nature, are the different methods of doing that. And is also found in various parts of the world. The largest deposit is actually located in Canada. So someone is actually working in Canada right now is going to be talking to us, possibly using references from the Alberta, the province of Alberta, Canada, to actually share with us. And we are actually delighted to say that she is one of us and one of the youngest among us. So I think it's a good one today to actually listen to her on this. After this, we're going to be giving this presentation will last between 30 to 45 minutes, and we will be giving opportunities to people that are participants to contribute based on their experience, because this platform, a lot of people, professors, doctors, people that have actually worked in the industry and actually actively working are here. So it's a kind of platform for us to share our experiences and share what we think is a way forward, because I don't understand why we should be talking about bitumen. We are about the largest owners. We are about largest in Africa and the 6th in the world, according to the from the recent data, the ministry, we're talking about over 40 million tons of reserve. And till date, nothing is actually, I'm not sure we are doing anything with it, though there have been a different beats from 2009, different blocks of bitumen have actually been actually in the public space for private investors to actually look at. To date, a lot of exploration actually going on that. But we think it's also right, we know the right thing to do so that we can actually also benefit from that. Also, the issues that are actually associated with bitumen processing and mining because of some environmental issues. I think engineer Ms. Salah Mariam had actually taken some great deal in also pursuing masters in environmental, in mining, in environmental engineering rather. Today, I'll say I will need to just say brief introduction that we'll be listening to Engineer Miriam. She's a graduate of mining engineering from Laurentia University. She's a mid-range mine planner at Suncor Energy, Alberta. She's also part of the team of engineers that strategize the 2-year ore and waste plan for the oil sand mine. Her interest on the impact of mining on the environment, like I've said, have actually led her to pursue a master's degree in environmental engineering. And apart from this, her career, she also enjoys hiking and skiing and also reading when she's not actually in active work. So I think it's high time we brought on the stage engineer Miriam Salah. So I think the stage is yours now. I'm going to share from here. Are you sharing from your side? Guys? Okay, let me mute you. Okay, you can unmute yourself now.
Awesome. I'll share if you don't mind.
You are sharing from there. Okay, let me allow that. Okay, you can't share your slide from there.
So let me know if you can see my slides.
Yeah, we can see the slide, but it's not in, you need to put it in a presentation form.
Or you'd like it.
Yeah, okay.
Is this good?
Yes, it's good.
So yeah, just working off of what Mr. Gideon said. I'm Salah. I'm a tactical support planner in Suncor Energy. I had my first undergraduate degree in mining engineering, and then I pursued a master's in environmental engineering. And if you want to contact me after this, that's my work email, and I'd be happy to hear from any of you. So I'll start this by a brief introduction. What is oil sand? So it's an interchangeable term. It can refer to as oil sand. Sometimes you call it tar. Sometimes you call it bitumen sand, but they all mean one and the same thing. So it's a loosely sand deposit that contains a very viscous form of petroleum. And typically, this bitumen deposit would have about 85% solids, about 10% bitumen, depending on the grade, and a bit of water as well. And bitumen can be found all over the place in the world. The largest deposit is in Canada, and we have other places in Asia like Russia, Kazakhstan, Madagascar, even Nigeria, like my mom previously said. And Nigeria ranks number 6 in the world in terms of the reserve or the estimated reserves of bitumen. So knowing this, I thought it'd be important to highlight the area or the parts of the world that have the largest oil sand deposit and are actively mining it. And that would be in Alberta oil fields. So, I mean, we all know, most of us have a background in geology or mining or something of that sort. And if not, a brief introduction of how oil is. Oil is basically organic matter that has been put under pressure in high temperature situations that cause it to become crude oil. And when we say organic matter, this could be algae, or like we all know dinosaurs, which is one of, I think, the sources of petroleum. So what I find very interesting is that when we were, I think in 2011, in our oil sand field, we actually came across a dinosaur deposit, which you can see here. It was well preserved. I mean, you can see parts of it at the end already like maybe mined out by mistake, but this is, you can, I'm sure you can make out the face of the eyes and the face of the dinosaur. And Suncor actually donated this to the museum. So you can go by, whenever any of you come to Canada, you can actually come by and see this from our oil sand fields, which I thought was pretty cool. So with the deposit that we have, just to give you a sense of how large this deposit is, this is Fort McMurray, which is where I currently am. And this would be the range of the deposit where you can tell that it's like going up north of it, it's a bit more surface, closer to the surface. And as we go down, it dips. And then we have the Rockies here, which is around the Alberta, BC region. So to give you a size, like a concept of the size of this deposit is that across the distance of Canada from the east to west is about 5,000 kilometers. Well, Nigeria is about 1.2 kilometers. And this area right here would be where the oil sand is. And with the large last picture, it gives you a concept that it cuts into some parts of Saskatchewan, and which is just another province, and almost like a quarter of Alberta. So it's spread, it's endless, really. It's just how much are you willing to dig for it and how much is it worth to you? So, like I mentioned, Canada is one of the largest oil sand reserves, about 1.5 trillion barrels of oil. But only about 10% of this volume can be economically recovered at this time. It's important to note that when you're talking about being able to economically recover a material, it's very dependent on the market value. So if it ever becomes worth it to go after the remaining 90%, depending on the price of oil, it may be achievable. It's also important to know that Alberta bitumen contains about 4 to 5% of sulfur. And if you have any experience or if you have any familiarity with mining oil sand or mining oil in general, processing oil, sulfur is not necessarily something you want to have. It classifies it as a subpar quality of oil when you have sulfur involved, especially when you're processing it. You have to get that sulfur out of the contents, which is an additional processing step that could incur extra cost. So this is something that we also experience here with the bitumen processing. And because of the way the bitumen is, or the way it attaches to the oil sand or to the sandy solid quartz, we can separate the bitumen from the 85% solids with water. So it's the Alberta oil sand is classified as a water wet type of bitumen. And this allows it to be able to be separated through gravity separation, like cycloning and so forth. So as mining engineers and geologists, it's very important to, what makes a mineral valuable is very dependent on the grade. And how do we measure bitumen grade? So there's this ratio we call the TV-BIP ratio, which technically tells us the mineability of an oil sand deposit. So it lets us know we assess the ratio of the stripping ratio, which is basically just the volume mined, which we would say is the volume of overburden over the volume of oil sand. That gives us that ratio. And then we also have the bitumen in place ratio, which is the bitumen in place, not the ratio, bitumen in place, which is just the weight of the oil sand. We consider the grade of the oil sand. You consider the density of the oil sand, and then you keep that ratio. So just a side note, I'm going to be using those terms interchangeably: oil sand, bitumen, tar, interchangeably. So don't get lost when you see oil sand or you see bitumen and I'm saying oil sand, or vice versa. So for instance, talking about the TV-BIP ratio, because in Canada, what we consider valuable is considered by the government, not by what the private companies require and consider. They already give us a TV-BIP ratio that we have to mine regardless. Let's say we're mining into like a pocket of oil sand and we find that the TV-BIP ratio is, let's say, subpar, what we would consider subpar. Let's say, for instance, the Alberta Energy Regulator requires any section deposit with a TV-BIP ratio less than 12 to be mined. So even if it's not great ore, as long as it's with this, it meets the Alberta TV-BIP ratio, we have to mine it. So this is where it becomes very tricky, where you have to, well, sometimes when the TV-BIP ratio is a bit low, we would stockpile it. When oil sand prices become better, then we would take that and process it into the plant. So it's kind of like a game of cat and mouse, because we cannot waste these things regardless of if we think they're subpar to Suncor standards or whatever company standards you're using. As long as Alberta or government regulation requires you to mine a certain grade of ore, you cannot waste it. So in Alberta, it's a TV-BIP ratio of 12, and it could vary from country to country or from place to place. So with this, with having a brief introduction of Canada oil sand mining, I thought it'd be good to look into Nigeria right now. So we have a resource estimate of about 42 billion tons of bitumen reserves in Nigeria, and this reserve is said to extend about 120 kilometers across multiple states, I think 4 states in the West. And because of the similarities between this oil sand deposit and the oil sand deposit in Canada, geologists think that they can predict similar extraction methods from oil sand in Canada to oil sand in Nigeria, which I thought would make it a very good case scenario coming into this. Again, so like Nigeria has oil, regardless. We're all aware of the oils that we have in the Niger Delta region. And I'm not sure, the grade of the oil that we have in Nigeria is really good oil grade, right? So it's oil that doesn't necessarily have sulfur in it. So when it's processed, when we're processing it, there are less steps involved, which in turn causes the price of the cost of production per barrel to be a lot lower. When we're considering looking into mining bitumen, there are other extra steps and extra processes that we have to consider. But first, it's not in a liquid form. So the extra step of having to separate that bitumen from that solid is an extra incurred cost and cost. Then again, remember that I mentioned that there's also sulfur in bitumen. So the extra step or process step of extracting that sulfur from the bitumen is also an extra cost. So I feel like it's a game where we have to think of, okay, well, even we have the resource, but we also have an alternative right now that we can get a less cost per barrel for. So I feel like the issue that we may have in convincing people to go after bitumen is because it's thinking they have the sweet oil that we have in Nigeria, the light crude oil. So how do you convince people to invest in bitumen when there are extra steps that would impact the cost per barrel? Not to say that this extra cost per barrel means that it's not economically viable, because that's what we do here. I mean, we understand that the process of getting our bitumen or oil sand or crude oil from our bitumen, we have more steps and layers than people in, let's say, Saudi, where it's just straight off the rigs. But it's still profitable enough for us to go after it, even though we understand that there are extra costs incurred. So the blocks that Mr. Gideon was referring to are highlighted here. And this was done a bit ago. This was the most comprehensive study of bitumen that has been done was in 1974 by Professor Adegoke. So I understand that they're a little bit like, there are probably other resource estimation that have been done, but this was a peer-reviewed journal. And I feel like when you're looking at having investors involved, this kind of gives an added layer of legitimacy, being that it's a peer-reviewed journal. Hence, it's been overlooked by other people in the industry and has been certified as good enough to publish. So aside from that, there hasn't been any, I mean, there's been work done here and there, but nothing in a peer-reviewed journal fashion. And also, I just want to say, if you have any questions, feel free to interrupt me. You don't have to wait until the end of the session. So I feel like something we could do to maybe like add legitimacy or maybe give some investors more confidence is to maybe have more government, even if it's government funded or privately funded, more resource estimation work done. I mean, we have a rough idea of where it is, but this is done in 1974. I'm sure like exploration methodologies have grown exponentially since then. We can have better tools to be able to properly estimate these things and have a better grained value of what we're working with. So this is definitely a place for improvement that we could definitely look into in Nigeria. So we can look at the blocks. So we have the block A around that Lagos region. We have block B in the Ogun, block C around the Edo region, and there are still there are estimates, recent estimates that have said that there are more bitumen found south of the Edo region, south of the block C over here. But again, not peer reviewed, so I didn't think it'd be beneficial to add this to the discussion, yes, because it's still up for debate. So when we talk about going into or exploiting these bitumen reserves that we've highlighted in the previous slides, it's important to understand the impact to the environment and the people living there. If you look at the area, you can tell that, I mean, through Lagos, through Ogun State, Edo State, the people that live here, I mean, there are little remote settlements around that area that would be displaced based on exploitation. I mean, I don't remember if you remember from the first slide, bitumen exploitation it's not a pretty sight. It's like a whole field with a hole in the ground with like black tar everywhere, getting everywhere. It really smells bad. It smells like petroleum, really. It gets everywhere, and it can get to the water, impact wildlife, everything. So if it's not properly controlled, there are a lot of environmental impacts that can harm the environment, the people, and the ecology in the area. So, for instance, like a case study of one of the places this bitumen belt crosses would be like, I can't pronounce this, excuse me, Okitipupa in Ondo State. Excuse my rubbish pronunciation. So in this area, we have a lot of farmers and fishermen there. And obviously, these are not only are these where they feed themselves from, it's also their livelihood, their work. We have to look at the impact of stripping all this bitumen and getting it how it would have on the environment and the people that live there. So if it's done improperly, like I mentioned in this last point here, it could disrupt their way of life. So, and I thought it'd be also beneficial to highlight some of the unique challenges that bitumen exploitation face in Nigeria. So, like I'm not one of those environmentalists that believes that mining is bad and we should just forget mining. I mean, mining, I feel, is a necessary evil. It's a way we need it. It's funny, I feel like this new generation Z is very anti-mining. I kid you not, because I was doing some outreach programs over here and going to certain schools, and nobody wants to do mining anymore. Mining has such a bad reputation that everyone in the new generation thinks that they are doing the environment and the world a disservice by going into mining. I don't know if those are the same sentiments shared in Nigerian schools, but definitely over here, we can't find anybody to be in mining programs anymore. And I feel like mining has it has earned that bad reputation because of maybe we haven't necessarily paid as much attention to our impact on the environment. And it's also important to know that the same people that say, oh my God, mining is so bad, would go on their iPhone that has all the heavy metals, all the little metals that was explored or mined to tweet out that mining is bad. So it's the hypocrisy of it all. But I understand that we need to strip the earth for minerals that we need as human beings. But that doesn't necessarily mean we don't mitigate the impact that could have to us. So where I'm going with this is that governance, for instance, like oil exploration has an exploitation we know can very negatively impact the environment. We don't even need to look too far. If you look at our backyard in Bielsa, the impact of all that shell rigging and all it's done, the leaking and the spillages and how it has impacted people that their primary source of living is fishing, and nothing is done to compensate them or to help them out in that region. We just That's just how they live now. Like we just accepted that that is it. So, and it's also important to note that yes, Shell is in Nigeria. Shell is also here. Shell has a very good environmental reputation here. They're honestly right next door. But look at the impact of what they're doing in Nigeria. I just want people to know that companies don't care about the environment. They only care about the environment if they're being forced to by the government. And we've shown that Nigerian government will not enforce the rules that they make. It's so like night and day to me to see the reputation that Ford has garnered in Canada as somebody that is very environmentally conscious and would put the environment first. But in my country, Nigeria, nobody's holding them accountable for all the spillages and they just do nothing about it. It's all about reputation. They don't really care. So for them to do the right thing, they need to put the government needs to hold their feet to the fire. And if they don't do that, then the Ondo region is just going to be another Bielsa region, which is not something that anybody would want. Another challenge that I think is unique to bitumen exploration in Nigeria is the technical information. Like I previously mentioned, the last peer-reviewed journal was in 1970 something. I mean, we need more updated information so we can give investors trust in the numbers and give us legitimacy when we're trying to get people to invest and entrepreneurs to go into this. Also, costs. Like I mentioned, bitumen has additional costs per barrels when you compare it to just light oil straight from the ground, where it's not something that I would typically compare in Canada here because that's all we have here. So it's not like we can, if we don't mind bitumen oil and we don't have oil. But in Nigeria, because there are options that could dissuade people from going into it, because why when the margin of profit is larger than I just get a light crude, why do I have to invest in bitumen? So for bitumen deposits, I have to touch on a bit of a mining method, as you know, but I'm just going to talk about the mining methods of bitumen. So with bitumen, we can have the surface mining, depending on the depth of the deposit, we determine how or the methods we would use in mining it. Kind of just like in any regular like mineral deposit, because I mean, if it's very close and has little overburden, then we would typically go for a surface mining method. If it's a bit too deep in the ground, then we typically go for underground mining methods. And if the competency of the rock around it is suitable enough for underground mining, that's what we'll do. Kind of the same for bitumen mining, just that for shallow deposits, so we consider a deposit shallow when it's less than 75 meters. Even better if it's like around 0 to 20 meters below the Earth's crust or 20 meters overburden, then we would consider that we can do a small scale mining approach with that. So something with like 75 meters or lesser, we would still do open pits, shovel and truck mining method. When it now becomes something below 200 meters depth, so in this deposit depth underneath the crust, we would typically go for the in situ method. So the in situ method is a very unique way of getting the bitumen out. As we discussed previously, bitumen is very viscous. It's very viscous to your touch. So when it's with the sand, I wish I had a video of like people just holding bitumen. It's like this viscous thing that just flows. So what we do is when it's in the ground, instead of us going deep and stripping everything and getting it and digging 200 meters underground, we will put steam wells into the ground and inject steam into the ground. So the introduction of that heat reduces the viscosity of the bitumen and lets it flow. And then from there, we would extract that bitumen back up and process it. So this has little minimal ground disturbance, but it's also, you can't go for it just because it has minimal ground disturbance. You have to have the right depth. If it's too shallow, then all the steam you're injecting into the ground just gets released out, and it's not beneficial for anybody. And if it's deeper, the better, really. So there's this weird spot of bitumen depth that kind of falls in this no man's land where it's too deep for surface mining, but it's too shallow for in situ mining, and that's between 75 to 200 meters. So just the pros and cons of either of them. For the in-situ mining, I mean, like I mentioned, it has a smaller footprint. You're not disturbing the entire ground, not stripping everything, getting all that wildlife and vegetation, or just to dig a hole in the ground. You're just having simple wells, and you have your plants, which you would have regardless if you had a surface mining in a surface mine. It's also more efficient use of water. I mean, we're using that steam, and we can recycle it as well. And the percentage of it uses about 1.1 barrel of water for every barrel of bitumen. And then I say no tailings pond. I say this in capital letter because as in the surface mine, especially for mining oil sand, a tailings pond is your biggest cost. It's your Achilles heel. You can never get enough containment to properly store all the tailings that's coming out from the processing. Because if you remember, like I said, the bitumen is, depending on the grade, you can get about 12% of bitumen in like your ton of material. And all that fine, it's all clay fine material. And all that fine material, when we extract the 12% bitumen, we have to get rid of that 85% sand. And that sand is mixed with water and maybe some parts of bitumen. So we can't really release that into the environment, because bitumen extraction from oil sand is obviously not 100%. There's maybe like 95%, so about 5% of that would be in a tailings pond, which makes it unsuitable for us to release in the environment. So we have to store all that. And if you think about it, at least we remove about 600,000 tons of bitumen a day. So think of the amount of water and tailings that we stored over time. If we're doing that per day, and that's not even the entire mine being moved, just or things we consider ore being moved. So the in-situ process is also a much lower cost. And there's some cons that you have a lower bitumen recovery rate. When we're putting those steam in the ground, we're not really getting everything that we could get, as opposed to us digging it up and mixing it with hot water and agitating it. We get more recovery rates from that. There's also a lower uncertainty of the ore deposit because it's so much deeper into the ground. There has been reported more greenhouse gas emission per barrel. And it's not just a process that you can stop and start. When your steam is going in there and it has to be continuously being put in for months before we can start getting liquefiable bitumen liquefiable enough to start extracting of. So for open pit mining, it's selective. You can be like, okay, I've opened my pit. I have this area that has large high grade ore. I have this area that has this low grade ore. Well, depending on the prices or depending on what's going on, I can say, okay, maybe today I'll do the high grade ore, tomorrow I'll do the low grade ore, or I can combine them and send it to the plants for better average, stuff like that. But if you have an in-situ method, whatever you don't have that flexibility. Again, like I said, the pros of open pit mining is when you extract it, you have about better recovery, 90%, due to the fact that you can agitate it and properly extract it, and of course, do the necessary amount of steps that will get you more recovery. The con of this again is, like I said, you're stripping all that topsoil, all that land, all that vegetation, you're displacing livestock and everything just to get underneath it. There's large reclamation costs involved, especially in countries like this where they hold you accountable for all your disturbances. We have to reclaim this land, and we've dug a 7-meter hole. So all of that is cost that we have to pay attention to, or to put aside in the future. It's also a larger cost of operation. Truck and shovel is not a cheap, like that whole process is not cheap. You have to think about the maintenance of those equipment. You have to think about the maintenance. You have to think about the impact, or like the cost of them itself. One of those trucks can be like $5 million, and we have a fleet of like 50, 60, 70 trucks. That's lots of money. They're also less efficient with water, which is 2.1 barrels of water per 1 barrel of bitumen. So this, I don't want to go into too much details because we're crossing into like the chemical engineering parts of it, but I just thought it'd be good to highlight the processing after we've mined it, ore preparation, which is more of a size reduction, the hydrotransport, which is also where we pump the slurry, which is when we've mixed the bitumen with the hot water, and when the pipe length is already like estimated to to get optimal agitation where we can properly break down the bitumen clumps and then have it more uniformly broken down. Because when we're pumping it through, the pressure and hitting the walls of the pipes helps breaking down the clumps of bitumen as well, which I thought was really cool. And then we have the extraction process that I've already mentioned previously, based on water-based gravity, where we try and make sure the sand sinks, and then the froth that floats at the top, which still has a bit of fines, we would scoop up and then take it for froth treatment, where we would put it in a cyclone, spin it, and then the fine materials will come to the bottom, and then the froth would be, so the larger heavy materials would be in the bottom, then the froth would be transferred to the next step, which is now a lot more into chemical processing, so I wouldn't touch on that. But I think that's all I had on this topic. Does anyone have any questions?
Okay, wow. Engineer Miriam, I think you've done excellently very well. Thank you for that wonderful presentation, and it was very direct to the point. I will, before I go in, before I open up the platform, please, I want some of us that I have questions and contributions to raise their hands, then I will come to you. But before that, I want you to lay more emphasis on why the reserve in Canada, only 10% is actually utilized or actually recovered. Can you lay more emphasis on that?
Sure. Like it kind of falls into that no man's land place that I was informing about, where it's not necessarily close enough to the surface, and it's not necessarily deep enough for in situ. And it also, if maybe in the future more mining methods are available, and then we can go after that if it's economical. But as at this time, it's in that weird between 75% to 200 and 75 meters to 200 meter like depth, where it right now isn't economical to go after.
Okay, that's good. And also, I will also want you to talk more on that, because I've seen two major things here in terms of processing. I think water requirement is a very big issue.
Yes.
The very big issue, and also environmental degradations and pollutions and all that, especially when it comes to surface water and the land and all that. Can you throw more light on water requirement? Because you say per day, talking about 600,000, according to what you are doing right there in Canada. So imagine here, let's say we take even just 10% or 20% of this is done here. What do you think about water requirements?
So for the mines around
especially the sources first.
Yes.
The sources before you talk about the effect.
The in situ mines, so the mines that we have here, like because we have everyone is trying to get a piece of the oil here. So we have my company Suncor, and then we have CNRL, we have Shell, everyone just located in this area. The beauty of this area is, although there's oil sand here, there's also a river that runs through. So we're allowed to take from that river and use that to process. We also do a lot of recycling. So if it's especially for the initial of that hot water that we use for agitation, it doesn't have to be clean, pure, pristine water. It can be tailings water that we're just handling and reusing. So there's a lot of water recycling that needs to be done. So if in Nigeria, if you want to implement something like that, you have to have a good water strategy where you're not just using and throwing away the water. You're having to use it and reuse it again. Because if you want to keep using a fresh batch of water, I don't think there's any river that can maintain that, especially if you're mining at this large of a size or quantity.
Okay, another thing before I wait for, please, if you have any contribution or question, I need you to raise your hand, then possibly I'll unmute you to talk. But before that, also, I want you to, okay, I have here, somebody said something about some data from MMSD, and I'll come to that. But I want to ask you again in terms of Okay. Okay, in terms of, the content, because in Nigeria, bitumen, I think there have been some studies done in terms of accessory um, heavy elements, heavy metals that actually are contained in the sand, in the oil sand. I wanted to talk more on the heavy element content of the oil sand in your area. And is there any significant recovery of nickel, vanadium, or other things apart from that actually make a headline?
Funny you say that. So yeah, with bitumen, it's an impure form. It's not the purest form of oil. So there's a lot of impurities. Some of them are metals. In our tailings pond, when we test the water there, we have we've seen trace quantities of nickel and all those like heavy metals that you're speaking of. And there has even been an initiative to go into the tailings pond and see if we can extract those metals because they could be valuable. So there are heavy metals in the deposits here, but not in large enough quantities that we could extract them. Or we'd have a separate process just to get them out of the deposit as well. So it's not. I don't think it's. I wouldn't say that it's something that it's economically viable for us or for this deposit to go after.
Okay. Do you think that what we have in Nigeria could actually be compared with what we have in Canada in terms of processing method? Do you think they are the same thing?
It's hard to say for sure. I mean, with the last Perfect Journal release, there are similarities, but to say how far the similarities are, at the end of the day, they're still deposits in two separate parts of the world. So I'm sure they vary in some ways. So it'd be hard to say for sure, but I'm hoping that that's where you geologists can go in and get more information on the deposit, so we can work off of that.
Oh, okay, you're throwing it to us. Back to us. Somebody here from Dr. Ameloku, Anthony, is saying he's thanking you for the presentation on tar sand. And he's saying something. He said, if you have something located between 75 and 200 meters, how are they going to be mined? Are you talking about? Because in your presentation, you made mention of two methods.
Yeah.
Open and underground mining, and 75 is saying surface mining is restricted to 75 meter. Why underground mining is at greater than 200 meter depth? No, he's just asking, how do you handle this?
So that's where we say that we can't get to them, because right now with the methods that we have, it's the stripping of the underburden, that it wouldn't be economically viable at this time because that'd be a really high stripping ratio. But at the end of the day, this is what I believe. So I don't quote anyone on it. Because oil is such a limited resource, like it's finite. At the end of that, there's going to be a time where we would definitely mine everything that we've had so far. The demand for oil, I don't know if it's going anywhere. I don't think so. Even as an environmentalist, I still feel like we need oil. When the need for that extra oil arises, I feel like that we get innovative as human beings to look for ways in which we can get that block deposit. But as of right now, because we haven't had to, we're just working with what we have, which is either surface or in situ. But I'm sure that when the need arises, like for instance, I mean, this is just me talking, but we can have a method where, because of that, for like in situ methods, we do that 200 meter depth because we don't want steam to get released. If we could have like a vacuum system where the steam is in, it's steadily being lost into the environment, and it still holds enough heat to reduce the viscosity. There are ideas for sure, but it's just that nothing is being pursued because the need hasn't arisen yet.
Okay, I'm seeing one hand here by Patrick Odiegu. I will also give him chance to talk or maybe make his contributions. Somebody said here, Thomas, to everyone, is saying, what are the potentials of SAGD, that tie and vertex in bitumen recovery, if I get him very right?
I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with that. SAGD?
Yes, and vertex in bitumen recovery. What are the potentials?
I'm not familiar with SAGD.
I'm not familiar with that. I don't please, Thomas, if you can clearly state your short forms so we can understand what you mean. by that, so we can take it on that. And also, I want to, there's another question here. Have you, I found out from what I've seen so far in Bitumen, I think it poses a lot of environmental challenges. And I want to ask, how are you guys working in terms of recovering the environment? Have there been any recovered area in terms of, post-mining activities? Have there been any way that is recovered and is under, brought back to a kind of near normal, or brought back to another state that other things are being done in such location?
Okay, so this is what I'm actually kind of proud of, because we successfully reclaimed a tailings pond. And if you know, tailings ponds are really hard because do they become rivers or like a water or a lake when you're done, or do they become land? Because it's literally like, it's really just fine material with water, with all that other byproduct of the processing, and not necessarily good. It's really hard to reclaim a tailings pond. But we were able to reclaim one tailings pond, not even to a river form, but to a land form. So we backfilled everything, and now we have vegetation on it. So, and what the strategy that we have is we don't wait until the end of the mine life before we start reclaiming everything. It's more of a continuous, gradual process. We will strip the topsoils. When we build our dumps, we try to reclaim them with low sodic soil, which just means soil that is low in what's that thing, in salt quantities, because where we are, the deposit, this area was the ocean before. So the soil, the deeper we go, we get salts, they're high in salinity, and that impacts the vegetation that grows. So what we typically do is we get better soils from other parts of the area, and then we use that soil to cover. So we do have gradual reclamation steps that we do as the mine progresses. And I think one of the biggest, even I'm sure if you go anywhere, Suncor likes to tell you, oh, we reclaimed the tailings pond. We're the first people to do that, according to the company.
Okay, that's a good one. It's a good one. I think, Patrick, I've actually allowed you to talk. Can you make your contributions? Yeah.
Yes, thank you very much, moderator. And I want to sincerely appreciate the presenter. What an excursion! Incredible. Nigeria have people. We know we have people, so there's no question. So 75%, 70 meters overburden. Interesting. Is there any economic activity that is derived before you get to that 75 meters from those overburden that you removed? Are they products that can be recovered with money, or do they set out a mining budget that enables them to just continue to excavate until they get down to 75 meters and start recovering the product? And when they start recovering this product, how deep can they go from the overburden perspective? Thank you.
So speaking to the mine that I'm familiar with, so that 75% of overburden, I'm sorry, not 75%, 05 meters. The mine that I typically work with when we plan, our overburden thickness is about 50 to 75. But it's not, we don't, even though it's waste, because we're building so much tailings ponds and we're building dams, the type of material in our overburden is good for construction. So we typically use that to construct things like the dams and the tailings ponds that we have. So they're not, even though they're waste, in a way they're good, they help our operation, our day-to-day operation. So I wouldn't say it's something that's economically mineable or economically beneficial. It's more just for something that would benefit us and helps us stay in business. For the deepness of how far you can go, that depends on the deposit, as well as how much royalties you've paid so far. And one thing that we're limited by in this deposit is that underneath that we have a Devonian basal water depressurization issues. So that means, like I mentioned, this area used to be an ocean millions of years ago. And then when we pass, there's a layer, after the oil sand, we have a layer of about limestone. And when we pass that layer of limestone, and let's say we dig and we blast there, if we could fracture that limestone and really, and have water from below that limestone fill into our pit. And I think it happened to Shell when they had to close down, where they went below the oil sand and cracked in limestone, and they had a lot of infill seepages that they had to shut down in that part of the mine. So I think in this particular deposit, we're limited by just the limestone layer at the bottom of it.
Okay, thank you. I think okay, he has come back with that. He said assisted gravity drainage. Okay, he's asking about your view on assisted gravity drainage, assisted gravity drainage method of extraction. What is your view on that, you know, as a method of extracting bitumen and tar sand at great depths?
So when you say assisted gravity, I mean, that is typically, we use, that's typically what we do because of the density differences of oil and of the bitumen and the sand. When we agitate it, we use gravity separation. That is our major form of separation. Either we're using it by cycloning or we're using the jig board. Assisted gravity separation is the method of separation.
Yeah, that's the major method because the densities are very clear. So jigs can actually do that. So I think it's one of the best method when you have a very large differences in terms of gravity, in terms of density. So I think that is it. Also we have Lex, Patrick, were you trying to say something? Okay, we'll have another hand here. Okay. Dr. Mrs. Salau, are you there? I think you want to say something.
Yes.
Okay.
So,
okay.
Yeah. Thank you very much. The young presenter, you've done a good job. We thank you for coming up at this period of time to attend to the nation, because this is our own national issue. The Lord bless all of us and make us take this, whatever we're doing now, to the next level, which will be beneficiary to all of us. Notwithstanding, what Patrick is asking, that all the materials to the depth of 75 meters, what do we use them for? You remember, we are always particular about doing the mining right. If you do the mining right, there is no wastage in the materials that you come across. If it's not used for construction, it will be used for something else. It all depends on the advancement in technology. And that is why we are saying anywhere you mine, if you're into any type of mining, metallic, industrial mineral, energy minerals, do it right. Follow it systematically, such that the waste of yesterday can be worth of tomorrow. That is just my contribution. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Ma. Thank you for that contribution. Do we have, let me check. There is another question that was posted here on our on the message by Engineer Guleti. He said he's talking about reserve and resource of MMSD, but I think it's more of geological than engineering when it comes to resource and reserve. He's saying that information is posted on the public domain, and at the same time, the same MMSD is saying that the public to use it at their own discretion. So I believe that irrespective of everything, no matter the information you get from anywhere, you still need to verify your information. But apart from that, when you talk about reserve and resource, it is clear. It is actually a technical and economical terms. When we're talking about resources, we are talking about guess, a kind of a guesswork. A lot of things have not been done. But when you're talking about reserve, it's like the numbers are clear I will say the numbers are very near to absolute of what they are saying, because the reserves are actually what the economics use for feasibility studies, is actually what is used for. You're talking about money. So I will only say that if we are serious, we can't be saying that reserve should be looked at as resource, and investors are actually interested in reserve. But the issue is that we have what it takes to actually develop what this all these resources here in Nigeria. So I think definitely they need to do more. Even what we are quoting about 38, from 38 to move to 39 now, I think the new result, the new data is 40. Is because of the various exploration activities that are actually being carried out and actually ongoing. Because I know that a lot of drilling are also going on even as we're talking in that side of the country, especially in the Ondo state. So I think it's something that I won't be worried about, but we have what it takes. If investors are coming in, they bidded these blocks for us, and it's on the public domain. So a lot of people that actually develop interest will still do their due diligence and go in as the case may be. So let's see, do we have any other, okay, do we have any other question here? I'm not seeing any other question. Okay, in absence of that, I think Engineer Miriam, you've done wonderfully well today. Please, we will also share the slides later on. Just drop in your email addresses and other contacts on the message box. We will, at the end of the day, we will actually send that across to you. I will want at this time to also thank some of us that actually participated today. Patrick, thank you for always being there. Patrick is here. Dr. Mrs. Salau, we thank you. Engineer Dr. Meloko, we thank you for actually participating. We thank Ize Umar, you are there. Dr. Akaha, say, I think I've seen you've been here before. Professor Elijah, we thank you for actually joining us today. We're seeing a lot of Engineer Tunji. Engineer Tunji is here also. Professor Elijah is there. Esther, thank you. Ato, I've not heard your voice today. I don't know if you can hear me. Thank you for joining. Mitchell is there. Thank you. Asilong, thank you. You must be in one of the forex today. Or are you observing the holidays? Okay. So I think everybody is free to actually talk now. If you want to say something before we close. Chidima, if you are there, I want you to say something. Let me know before you do the closing remark. Are you there? Can you hear me? Yes, can you hear me? Okay. Before
yes,
that,
you can be heard.
Okay, please, can we have our pictures on, our videos on, just 3 seconds, so we can just take snapshots of the participants on today. And also, there is something again Patrick posted. He said, you know, this is a platform for a lot of professionals. If you know you have what it takes to, or you have experience in lead and zinc, or project management in mining, or you're a mining engineer, and you have what it takes, you can actually also reach us, or you can reach directly to Polyguard. Patrick is the CEO and founder of Polyguard. Polyguard is one of the foremost companies that actually involved in lead zinc pyrite mining in Benue State, actually located in Tukula, government area. So I think if you are interested in that opening, you can also reach Polyguard on that. There are a lot of work going on in that location for you. If you have someone you can also refer, fine, it's okay. You can also refer someone on that aspect. I promise you that in the next series we'll be having a lot of things to do on as far as mineral is concerned. We are looking at also going in some aspect of lead and zinc prospects in the lower Benue Trough, and also looking at processing of lithium in our next presentation and all that. So I think there are a lot of things that are packed on this platform for you. So I think it's high time. Chidema, are you there? Chidima, can you hear me? Okay. I don't think she's there. Patrick, you are saying something?
No, I was just trying to re-echo what you said, and also to assure us that it's not here to rule, that this is our beautiful country, Nigeria. We cannot continue to allow the Chinese, the Lebanese, the Indians, and the rest of them that are carrying their pinky skin to be lording it over our wonderful, lovely skin. We need to get into the play. We need to assure our young people there are opportunities in this country. We cannot continue as before. We must now be emboldened, whatever it takes. We have to work collaboratively where we lack capacity so that we can actually create the opportunity in our own. We can't continue to flip around and be going everywhere. We've seen what our Sudan has become, and we've seen what the Egyptians are doing to Nigerians that want to have the same capacity. So it's about time we build our own content. That's all.
Okay. Thank you for that wonderful contribution. Finally, please, can we put on our videos? I think a lot of videos are still off. Just for some seconds, if you can hear me, just put on your videos. We'll take a shot. Yes, okay, I'm seeing faces. Yes, a lot of people are on, but a lot are not on. Okay, we can take this one now. We will take another one. Okay, let me look at the second. Yes. Okay, I think that's good. Thank you very much for participating in today's webinar series. Next one will come by the end of this month. You know, this was supposed to be done last week, but because of the Salah celebration, it was actually pushed today. That is public holidays. But the another webinar for the month is actually coming on this same month, and it's going to be very interesting. We thank you all for participating. Once again, we want to thank our presenter today, Engineer Miriam Salau, for that wonderful and succinct presentation. And we are very glad and we are very honored and we are bold to say that she's one of the youngest in Iamesep. And we are actually doing it with the young ones who are going on. So a lot of ladies among us, you can see that there's no barrier. There's no barrier. We're very sensitive. You can't say you are old, you are too young, you are that, and all that. I could remember those days, but today, she's here to impact. You know, it's all about giving to humanity. It's all about giving whatever you've done, wherever you are. We can actually have someone to refer to. Please, what do you think about this? You know, imagine at this stage, years of experience, then imagine what happens in the next 5 years. See what she's actually dishing out now. The next 5 years, it will be something interesting. So that's why it's good to give out to the society. When it's all about stage, the life stage. So when you are going out, someone should be coming in. It's just the way it is. So we need to groom the young ones, whatever we have. It doesn't mean that all of us don't have anything to do. A lot of us here that actually participated today have so much engagement, but they found it very interesting to be with us and also to give out to the society. A lot of people are listening. A lot of people, most of the time, people that watch the video and comment that come back are far more than people that actually participate actively, because everybody might not have the time to be live. But these videos goes a long way to talk a lot about what we are saying, the initiative, what we're actually talking about, the minerals in the country for investors, for the government also, the regulators also to look at it and understand there are so much to do, especially when it comes to the solid mineral industry in Nigeria. So once again, I thank everyone. And at this time, I wish everyone a pleasant day ahead.